Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Black Breastfeeding panel discussion. My name is Kemka, and I'll be leading this discussion. I'm so honored to have this conversation with you all. Black Breastfeeding Week is a celebration of empowerment and truth telling. We know that breastfeeding offers powerful benefits for mothers and babies, and we also know that Black women are often faced with unique barriers rooted in systematic racism, medical biases, workplace challenges, and lack of culturally relevant support. Our goal today is to shine a light on the realities, highlight the community support and solutions, and also explore what true breastfeeding equity looks like. And so let's just dive into this discussion. This is a safe place. We are open to learning and to sharing and uplifting each other. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started. But before we get started, we got to introduce the panel. I mean, look at these lovely ladies up here, all this knowledge. So let's introduce our ladies. So I'll just go first, and then I'll just pass it around. Is that okay? Y'all okay with that? Okay. All right. So my name is Kemka, and I'm the Program and Navigation Services Manager at Roots Community Health.
My name is Jamila White. I am a lactation consultant and founder of Breastfeeding Before Birth, prenatal breastfeeding services.
I'm Cassidy Ozawara, and I'm a registered dietitian.
And I'm Brandy Gates Burgess, lactation consultant and founder and executive director of Breast Friends Lactation and Support Services.
So now, this is not just any kind of conversation. This is a real conversation with real women that's doing the real work. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this first question I have is, how does structural racism and medical biases show up in the breastfeeding journey for Black mothers, particularly in the hospitals? And what can we do, and what changes need to be made in our healthcare systems? And I can pass it over to Cassidy if you want to start.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that can be done, of course. But one example that I think of right away is a recent experience that I had with my sister. Just 1 month ago, exactly today, she delivered a baby at a local hospital and ended up with a C-section, which happens. But right off the bat, the baby was given a bottle, and it was like they were going through a checklist of things they needed to do, and everyone was very proud of themselves. The baby's already been fed, check. And it was just really disheartening for me to see, especially, working with you all and understanding and learning about those disparities, and then having it happen to my sister, who looks exactly like me. She didn't really have that autonomy to decide. Like, she might have been a little out of it with the C-section and whatnot, but just to decide automatically that her baby would be breastfed. And then once they were wheeled into the recovery room, it was just kind of put on her chart that this family prefers formula. And she was like, wait, I never said that. And it was just this whole thing. And it was really sad to see. But that was just the example that I had very recently that I thought, wow, we could make some adjustments here and just make it better for others. So that was something that happened recently.
And we tend to think about this being a years ago problem. People are still fighting for this. Why are we still fighting for this? Because it's still happening. And so for it to be so recent, I mean, that timeline is like, this is still this is still maybe an hour ago problem. You know what I'm saying? So anyone else want to?
Yeah, I would say exactly like what your sister experienced, that unfortunately is not uncommon. I think for a lot of Black women, they just don't get the options.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly what was going on with the baby, but even just explaining, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to fix. Do you prefer this or this, And then for a lot of Black women, maybe they don't feel comfortable enough speaking up for themselves. Yeah, unfortunately, it's something that happens all too often. And that's one of the reasons why we really need advocacy in the room there where it's happening, when it's happening.
Yeah, it was really bizarre because I didn't understand any kind of indication where the baby would need to be fed just so immediately with formula. Like it was 8.5 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of families are not really doing the prenatal education needed to make an informed choice. You know, one of the things I like to share is like when we're getting ready to learn how to drive, we're like getting the DMV book and doing all the things just so we can be prepared to pass our exam. But when it comes down to breastfeeding and birth, a lot of us are not preparing in the way that we should to be able to pass through, you know, the hospital, to navigate through these systems, right? And being in the hospital, being, you know, in a place where there may not be a lot of people that look like us,
Right.
supporting us and caring for us, and really knowing like your rights, what to advocate for, what to look for, what is normal and what is not normal. And I think, you know, we should be doing more investing in that prenatal education and that preconception care before, you know, we get into the hospital and now it's like a, you know, a big situation that needs to be handled.
And you know, just thinking about that, you know, even though we can educate ourselves and we can like really try to do all of the research, a lot of the times it's not always us that's the issue, right? The education that happens for our doctors, right? Are they getting educated on lactation support? Are nurses getting, you know, educated on lactation support? And a lot of those times that that stops us from even being successful. I don't know if you know if any of you want to talk about that a little bit.
I definitely think that, you know, doctors and nurses don't receive a lot of education in, you know, medical school, nursing school around lactation. That's why it's important to have a lactation consultant on staff that can, you know, help with those situations that may be above or out of the nurses or pediatrician's scope of work to handle it. You know, lactation consultants go through extensive training, 95 hours of lactation specific education, you know, doing clinical in-service hours. A lot of us had to do 300 to 1,000 hours, right, of like direct hands-on service that a lot of people, so we're really like the doctors of the lactation field, and a lot of people don't like understand that part of it. We learn about breast anatomy, infant oral anatomy, you know, different health conditions that can impact lactation, medications, you know, psychological things. It's a real like expertise. You really do have expertise in infant feeding and lactation.
And it goes back to receiving even that, like what you were saying, that prenatal care, because if you don't get that care, you may not even know the person that you're dealing with is not the specialist for this baby when it comes to feeding, when it comes to lactation, when it comes to breast health. So you're thinking, these are my providers. Everyone in here is the expert.
Yeah.
And so when your nurse tells you something, you may not even know to question it. I think that's the case for a lot of Black families. They just don't question almost. It's just, this is what I've been told, they're the authority. When in reality, usually the doctor is not the authority in lactation, in breastfeeding, in whether or not, you know, the baby's receiving milk or not. So going back to that prenatal care so that families can understand this is what a lactation consultant does, and being aware that their provider may or may not have breastfeeding. They may have breastfeeding experience, but they may not have breastfeeding education, and their situation is unique to their own.
Yeah. And just thinking about there is a care team. So the doctors, we don't need the doctor to be the expert in lactation. We don't need, you know, we just want to be a part of the care team and be a value player in that health, you know, in that care of that family that is in the hospital needing that support.
You know, a lot of that can cause stress. And just going into the next question, how do stressors such as work, family responsibilities, financial pressures impact breastfeeding goals? And what role does the workplace policies play in supporting or hindering mothers from being successful?
I think stress is a big factor when stress is known to decrease milk supply, just with hormones like oxytocin and things that will not allow that letdown to happen. And, you know, you can definitely see that. I know I experienced something similar when I had my first child during the pandemic. And so I was able to take my time and really breastfeed as long as I wanted, well past the recommended time. And, you know, I was very proud of that. But when it was time to go back to work for my second baby a couple years later, I returned to the workplace and then had the fun experience of, you know, pumping at work. And it's interesting. There's a lot you have to think about on top of your role at your given, you know, employer, but having to bring all the parts and make sure you don't forget something, or did you sterilize everything? And then, you know, are you walking by any male colleagues, and like, how does that play in? And so I think there's just a lot, you know, if you don't have that support in that community, then it can really be a struggle and make or break your breastfeeding experience or success.
Right.
It's so true.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of, I don't know if we know the statistics around, you know, Black parenting. About 73% of Black women tend to be single parents. And so when you put that into the lactation equation,
Right.
it's like, if you're a single mom, how you don't have that support, right? You can't really think about like going back to work. Some people don't get that extended leave because if you're a single mom taking care of your children, you need you need to get that bag. You need it to take support your family. And so oftentimes people don't want to advocate for themselves, even if they know about lactation accommodation that's protecting them. It's like, I don't want to, you know, rock the boat because I can get fired. And if I get fired, I'm the only person to take care of my family. What does that look like? And so we really need to be strategic about, you know, planning out what lactation accommodation looks like for Black women in the workforce. You know, a lot of times too, they could be workers like that work in fast food or that work in Walmart or a restaurant, and they may not have, you know, the nice lactation lounge to pump and get comfortable and put, you know, all the things. They might be driving the bus. They need to figure out,
Yeah.
you know, how can I pump on my route? You know, can I put my hands free? Oh, can I charge them up or whatever the situation is? And so we really have to sometimes think outside of the box when it comes to supporting Black women and, you know, lactation and going back to work or even going back to school and being separated from their baby.
And that even makes me think of, what about storage? Like the storage.
Right.
That's important too.
Yeah.
Like, yes, okay, 4 hours, you know, after you pump, it can stay out. But what if you have, you know, a long 8-hour day?
Yeah.
You know, you can't go and put it in, you know, a refrigerator and try to make sure that it's cold enough. You know, there's just so many things. So, thank you. So the next question that I have is, what connections do you see between lower breastfeeding rates among Black women and the broader maternal infant health disparities?
I think for me, from the very beginning, kind of what kicks everything off, we know that if a woman doesn't breastfeed in the hospital, she's less likely to continue breastfeeding, or if she's given formula in the hospital, she's less likely to continue breastfeeding. So from the beginning, and I'll probably sound like a broken record by the end of this conversation, but it really does go back to options. Like when it comes to those disparities, we have to understand that a lot of times Black women are not even given the options of some other people because you already come in there with, oh, they don't breastfeed. But you know, the baby's crying, do you want to give formula? Even being asked that question, it can get asked to Black women more often than it does to anybody else. And so from the beginning, we can be set up to have these disparities because we're just not given the same options as other people, unfortunately. And then later on, that plays into, okay, like Brandy was saying, maybe she's a single mom. Now she's going back to work. She didn't get that first few hours of stimulation, hand expression, all of that. She was supplemented before 48 hours before she's even leaving the hospital. And she already has less time at home, if any time at all at home. And so it's like this domino effect, it's this snowball effect that keeps getting larger and larger and larger.
Yeah, and that snowball effect again just puts more stress on the mother, and I just have to say that single mothers, being a married woman and having one child and seeing the stress that it causes on me, I'm like, single.
Yes.
I had a new appreciation for single women because I do not know how I would be able to do it, and so I give it up. So I give it up to single women, just doing it, holding it down. But I also know that the support of a good man or a good support person, let me say it that way, a good support person makes a world of a difference, right? When you could even just take a break. Right? A mental break. Even if I need to shut my eyes for 1 minute, that makes a difference. So I just appreciate the.
Can I add on to what Jamila was saying about the health and how it impacts? We know that Black women and Black people in general, we sick, y'all. Like I didn't know. So when I was in college, I took a class called Social Demography of Health, and I didn't realize how sick Black people were until like they were putting it on the screen. I'm like, we had the highest rates of diabetes, breast cancer, obesity, like all the hypertension, high, and I'm like, wait, we really out here sick. And so what the research shows is that if Black babies would be breastfed for at least 6 months, it changes the health trajectory of that child and also impacts the mother's health, right? Reducing diabetes later on in life, breast cancer, ovarian cancers, right? Shrinking you back down to pre-pregnancy size or helping you to lose some weight. And so we have to really consider what our health is before we have our babies. Yes. If we have hypertension, if we have gestational diabetes, or if we're a little overweight, because those things can impact our ability to give birth. If our babies are going to be born too big or too small, which means they could be supplemented in the hospital or separated in the NICU for whatever reason that may be. And then that impacts lactation, right? If the baby's losing too much weight, they're going to be supplemented. If the hospital is not, having donor breast milk formula supplementation, now the baby's so used to getting the bottle and formula, which can lead to latch issues, Or if the mom is having a cesarean birth, now we have limited mobility of like how we can position baby if they're in too much pain. And so all of those, our health prenatally, preconception, before we even think about getting pregnant, we really need to consider how that's going to impact the way our ability to be able to feed our babies.
You mentioned something real good about some of the long-term health issues, that if we're not breastfeeding our babies, what does it look like as an adult, right? And we don't really think about that until we are adults, right? And then now we're trying to feed ourselves good food and all of that. But the setup is that in that breast milk, it's the setup, the foundation of how our body functions is in that breast milk. We get the antibodies, we get,
like your gut.
Yeah.
Your gut.
Health,
If we're feeding our baby something artificial from the time they're born, how is that impacting our gut health?
Right.
And our gut health is how, I'm sure Cassidy could speak to that as the dietitian, how it really impacts our, health trajectory throughout our life.
Yeah, that was one thing I did want to touch on is just the breast milk itself and how dynamic it is and how important it is for the baby. Early on, I think that's huge and key in what you're given and the immunity that's there, the antibodies, like we touched on, and just being able to give that to your baby automatically and know that the needs are going to change with exactly what the baby needs, exactly when it needs it, is really, really huge and also going to play a very large factor in how they develop. And, even the flavors that the mother is getting and passing through the breast milk, that's just really huge in how the child will eat and if they're going to be, a highly adventuresome eater later on or be exposed to those flavors that are available that the family will be consuming, later on in life. So there's just so much there that it's just so key and important. And yeah, I hope people are able to do it.
It really does prime the gut. Breast milk really does prime the gut. I don't think enough people understand that when babies are born, they are sterile. There's nothing artificial. Exactly. And you don't get that back. And so the first thing, being able to coat a baby's gut, being able to coat their intestines, the lining of their stomach with that colostrum, that is like, you have one shot to do that. So when someone takes away that opportunity, or you don't know that it's even there, it really does, like I said, it has that snowball effect where,
I read an article one time that said if you only just one bottle and what it does to the baby's gut, but it did say that if they can switch back to exclusive breastfeeding, it takes the breast milk 2 weeks to repair the damage that one bottle of formula did to the gut.
because it's living, right? Breast milk is living.
Yes.
So it's constantly repairing. It's constantly almost like resurfacing the gut, all of that. So,
Yeah. I even tell my families that say, no, breastfeeding, I don't want to do it. I'm like, okay, well, at least give your baby colostrum for the
Colostrum.
first couple of days. Like,
Yes.
seal that gut, keep infection and bacteria out, and then, you could do what you're going to do. But at least give your baby's gut a little
Yes.
choice.
Now, see, I didn't even know, and I don't know if anybody else in the room knew how important that colostrum. Like we know about, that liquid gold, and you're right.
Yeah,
It's something fun to say. It's cute. It's a hashtag, but it actually serves a purpose to line the gut. Like, wait, hold on, what?
Yes, yes.
I'm okay. Wow. So hope that's a sound bite. So make sure that we keep that.
You see that skill of the lactation consultant?
Yes.
You see that popping off?
Right.
That's why we the experts.
Right. Yeah, because a doctor wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
A doctor wouldn't know that. So let's talk about community support. And so how have doulas, birth educators, and culturally relevant community programs helped to address disparities in breastfeeding? And can you share any stories?
I think you'll be good for this, Brandy.
Yeah, so I was trained as a doula. I thought I wanted to do birth till I did my 3 births, and then I said no. I'm gonna just stick on over here to lactation postpartum side. But I think the doulas are the ones. The Black Breastfeeding Week theme this year is boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And the doulas, the lactation peer educators, the community lactation consultants, they are the folks with the boots on the ground. They're doing the work. They have hands-on, lived experience. A lot of them have successfully breastfed themselves. And so they kind of know what it's like. They have that empathy. They're able to provide evidence-based care, but they also have empathy. And they also have the hacks or the pro tips. Like, girl, this is how you can do it. This is how you can pump, and store your milk, because they've lived through it. And so really valuing that lived experience as an expertise, right? Of like, a lot of times it's like, oh, that's the doula or that's the peer. But I'm like, no, they have actually went through going back to school or going back to work at 6 weeks, being a single mom, being on the bus transporting milk. They've lived it. All the things that we're talking about right now, they've been through it. And so why not use our lived experience to create action plans, to create workflows, to create community programs to really provide that support from a grounded, community lived experience way. Not a lot of programs are, from the top down. And I think with breastfeeding support, it should be from the bottom up, because that's really, where the help is needed. And it's everyday mamas that's going through that's struggling in silence. And the doulas and the lactation peers are the ones calling and texting them and hitting them in the DMs like, girl, you can get through this. you know, because they're following them on social media. They see those kind of posts where, you know, those subliminals, like we like to say, like, girl,
Right.
like, what's happening here? Like, they can read into it, whether the doctor or the nurse, they're not following their clients on social media. They don't know what's really happening on the groundwork, on the ground level.
That's so true. Sometimes we suffer in silence, and being able to have somebody who is close to you that can just like, hey, I'm gonna just check in real quick. It's so important. Was there anyone else that wanted to?
No, I agree with everything that I agree with everything
And sometimes,
that
you know
Brandon was
what?
saying.
I think too, sometimes you really just need, you don't need like a professional to be
Right.
like, you need to do this. Sometimes it's like, girl, hey. You know, like, I heard this, or yeah, my baby would, you know, affirming that experience. Like, my baby, I went through this with my baby too. It's not exactly, but it's very similar. Or sometimes you just need somebody to listen without judgment, without fear. You know, like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand. You know, and sometimes people just need to get out all the anxiety, all the fear, all the questions. And if you know, you can't schedule an appointment with your doctor because it's a week, 2 weeks away, breastfeeding is like in the moment. You know, you need to get support within that 24 to 48 hour period. And so, you know, that's where the doulas are important. That's where the lactation peers are important. But I do got a bone to pick with the doulas because not all doulas have lactation education all the time.
Okay. I was like, what we gonna say?
No, we gonna say some good. We're gonna say like
We love you, doulas.
Yes, we love the doulas, but sometimes they don't have the lactation education
This is
needed,
very true. That's very
and they don't refer in enough time. That's my biggest problem with doulas. I'm like, girl, why was you thinking you could do that? And you sending them to me 2-3 weeks, and now I gotta fix the sore nipples and the milk supply, and I'm like, call me on day 3.
It goes
I
back
got
to
you.
having yes,
So true.
like
So
a
true.
care team.
Yes.
It really is a care
Yes.
team. You can't be the specialist in everything. And and saying like, you know what, I don't know, that's a better question actually for the, you know, your pediatrician. That's a better, I actually didn't go to school and breastfeed. I don't know what that looks like. Do you have a peer educator? That's what I don't know if everybody's familiar with what like a peer educator is, like a lactation peer educator. It literally is someone who is your same age or around, basically who has gone through what you are going through now, and who has come out on the other side, who has extra training where they can speak to you in those times. Like, she drives a bus, you're telling her to refrigerate her, that's not going to work for her.
Right.
She needs 2 pump kits. It's literally something,
Right.
saying something like that.
Right.
It's advocating in a different way. And that really care team, you really do need a care team, because in that respect, like that lactation educator, that peer educator, is going to serve a different role than a nurse would, than a lactation consultant would, than a pediatrician would. And it
And a
really is
doula.
important. And a doula. It really is important to bring everybody on, especially for Black women, when we really do need that support throughout from the time like conception all the way to when you decide to, you know, when your baby really.
First year.
Community.
The
You
first
need-
year.
yeah,
you
the
need
first
that
Yeah.
wraparound support.
And it's that community that you're really building. Like, you really need a community to breastfeed. And I think we try to do it on our own. Like, I feel like I'm the one that says this all the time, but we have our capes on and we try to do it on our own.
100%.
And it's about taking that off and looking around and seeing, oh my goodness, wait, there's actually support out there. And I need to actually
tap
go out
in.
there. I need to tap in.
Tap in.
I need to put my boots on and get out there.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be done the hard way.
Right.
Like, that's where
Exactly.
help- Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have to be the hard way. We don't have to make it this big thing. Like, it's
Just because you can
right.
doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. Right. And that brings me to my next question, and it's mostly about hospitals. So, so what impact could hospitals initiatives such as baby-friendly hospitals and practices have at advancing breastfeeding equity?
I think, one, of course, we need compassionate care. We need people to understand you and meet you where you are and all of that. Unfortunately, though, Black women don't always get that privilege. And so what something like Baby Friendly can do is it standardizes everything. So it's not you going into this room and saying, oh, this is a family with these resources. She does this for a living. He does that for a living. I know that they're going to want to give donor milk, or mom's doing this, that let me go and offer them donor milk, right? With something like Baby Friendly, where it really does focus on mom's own milk first, or the mother's own milk first, and then going to another form of human milk, what that can do is really standardize everything across the board, where it's, I don't get to look at this person and say, okay, let me look through their chart. Oh, she didn't do this. She doesn't have a partner. She doesn't have any support. She doesn't formula. She has WIC formula. You know, what Baby Friendly does is it kind of standardizes it across the board in a way that can hopefully, what it should do is give Black women access to the same type of care that everyone on that floor should have access to.
Yes, and all hospitals, right? You said that all hospitals.
Right. As of 2025, I want to say, all hospitals have to have what are called like the 10 steps to Baby Friendly. So, your local hospital should have it. And basically what that means is putting breastfeeding first.
Yeah.
So encouraging bringing her baby, bringing the baby to the breast, making sure they get skin to skin, making sure they get access to the golden hour, making sure they don't get formula before they leave the delivery room.
And not with a bottle.
Right, with a bottle, of all things, yes, exactly. So that's kind of what it lays the foundation for that, and what all hospitals should be going through. So in cases where we know that Black women just don't have equity, we already know the maternal infant mortality rates, something like that can give structure, so that hopefully.
And also, I would like to add that there is standardized in education. So everyone within 6 months of being brought on to the team, so if you have new nurses coming in, new providers, they have to have 20 hours of lactation education, so that even if they're a new nurse or they may not have been at a hospital that was breastfeeding friendly, now they're able to get this education to be able to provide support for the family. I also know that, for hospitals, it's important for them to give clients access to lactation professionals and medical staff that look like them and that are from their communities. A lot of folks that are nurses and doctors born and raised in California or wherever, they can't even get jobs in their own state. It's very hard. And so if you're not rooted in community, how can you know where the resources are to refer folks to postpartum? A lot of people only spend 24 to 72 hours in the hospital. Though the breasts look very different at 72 hours when they go home. They're like, I got these engorged breasts leaking. They wasn't doing that in the hospital. Those little cute, sleepy babies you all smelling. They all, you like, wait, where's the nurse? Where's the midwife? And so you get a reality check. But it would be nice. One of the, I think it's step 10, that they have to be able to provide a list of community support resources. And so if you're not a baby-friendly hospital and you haven't even sat down and say, like, what's in my community? How can I tell this mom, Keisha, like, hey, here's Breast Friends, here's Roots, here's Black Infant Health. Go to these places. They have Black lactation consultants that can help you. Or even if whatever color skin you are, but I know it's Black Breastfeeding Week, but you really want to prioritize looking at where can I get these folks in my hospital, in my community, support after they leave these doors. And last but not least, to add, a lot of hospitals only hire RN IBCLCs. And a lot of IBCLCs are not RNs. There's a lot of, like me, myself, I'm not an RN, right? So I'm not a registered nurse, but I work in a hospital setting. And when you actually hire folks that are not RN, they can prioritize lactation. My only job is, like I tell people when they ask me, I'm like, I only work with babies and breasts, okay? Like if you try to talk about your down here pain, let me go get the nurse for you. But if you got a nipple pain, I got you. And so that just allows the nurse to prioritize the care and pain management and all of those things. And lactation can do all of the breastfeeding support, and the nurse can then follow the plan that we create for them.
And what you just said is that dual role that a lot of nurses play. Sometimes it gets lost,
Yes.
right? It can get lost where you have to focus on being an IBCLC or you have to focus on being a nurse. You can't do both, but a lot of the times they're hired to do that. Is there any, any of you want to talk about that a little bit? Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Like you were saying, when people are hired in a dual role, you can have both. You can be a registered nurse and be an IBCLC.
Yes.
But the issue is when you have to do that, those dual roles in your one scope of practice, like when you're with this mom, you have your 3 diets that you're working with. If I'm a nurse, I'm prioritizing patients who have preeclampsia. I'm making sure I get my pain meds on time. I'm making sure I check my vitals on time. I'm making sure, which they should be.
Yes.
But what gets put on the back burner is hand expression, deep latch,
Supplementing
engorgement,
at the breast.
supplementing at the breast,
yeah.
starting pumping, all of those things, because those are, yes, they are important, but in that hierarchy of needs, which it automatically comes down to that's at the bottom. And so if I am worried about, okay, do I sit here and tell you about hand expression and the benefits of colostrum and adjust and readjust the baby while this other patient needs her Toradol? I don't have time to do that. So I'm going to ask you, okay, baby's not really latching well. What do you think about formula? Give you other options that I may not have. Someone who's working in a lactation consultant role exclusively can come in, and Brandy, I know you know this, like come in and sit with that family
we
for
have the time.
an hour.
Yeah, we have the time.
And adjust and readjust and readjust. And I think it just gets lost. Like you were saying, even this what's happened with your sister where she may not have had access to a lactation consultant, like who was doing that one role. Because like you said, they were looking at a checklist. Like, okay, I got the baby fed. Okay, I got this.
Like, so proud. We already did it. So we're good.
Right. And that sets that mother up and that family up for not a successful or a harder role, harder way of getting to where she wants to be in her breastfeeding journey. And that sometimes is hard. And a lot of times there's some myths, there's some common myths, there's some misconceptions. And so for opposing to all of you, what are the most common myths, misconceptions, or challenges that you've encountered around breastfeeding, and how do we help mothers work through that?
You have a lot, Cassidy.
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to diet, sometimes there's a myth that, the maternal diet has to be just perfect in order to get, a very perfect breast milk, a perfect human milk for the baby. And that's just not the case. Very often, I think, like we talked before about the spices that are going to be completely fine to have for the mother, just to give that baby some different flavors. I think also when it comes to just making sure that the mother is hydrated, like that's a key thing. Proper
Drink your water, sis.
nutrition so that they have the energy. It's more about that, right? So in making milk, the body's going to prioritize the production of the milk. And so even in times of famine, right, the baby will still be able to get breast milk. So just making sure that, the mom is getting adequate calories, making sure not to skip meals, and then looking at a balanced diet, when it comes to whole grains and good sources of protein and dark green leafy vegetables, like all of those main things, and eating regularly, keeping a water bottle next to you so you can drink water every time you pump or every time you feed, what have you. I know that's a big one when it comes to just what should my diet look like. So that was one item I wanted to discuss.
And there's no perfect diet, really.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine, and your baby will eat whatever you're eating. So,
It's dynamic milk.
yeah.
It's going to work out.
Another myth, I would say kind of going along the same thing with like diet and food and feeding. myths can come from our own families because of their own lived experience with breastfeeding or formula feeding or a mixture of the two. Oftentimes, for Black families, a lot of the households are like multi-generational,
Yeah.
different families living in one household. So if you have an older sister who maybe gave formula early and that was her plan and her baby was sleeping 4 and 5 hours, you who is exclusively breastfeeding, your baby might be up more frequently than that.
Yeah.
And so it can look like to your family, like, see, that baby's not getting enough. Look how watery your milk is.
Yeah.
Look how watery your milk is. Your milk is not white. Your milk is still gray. Your milk is still this. Put a scoop of formula in the baby's bottle. You know, give your baby, put some cereal in that bottle. Like, that's what. And, you know, that's why your baby's not sleeping. That's why your baby is always crying. That's why your baby has colic. Just these different myths that our family can have because of their own experience. And then I think it's important when we're talking about, as even for classes sometimes, like education, they focus on who's the parent, who's the mom, who's the dad, that's your baby. These are the people who are allowed in this class.
Yeah.
But for a lot of Black families, well, okay, that's fine, but the grandma's still going to be taking care of the baby. The auntie's
Yes.
still going to be taking care of the baby.
Yes.
So we really need to rethink the way, like when we're offering classes, when we're offering support, when we're doing our teaching, asking like who will be caring for your baby, who will be holding your baby, who will be, you know, when you go back to work, things like that, so that you can bring them in and ask them what are their thoughts, like so that you can educate them. You're educating the village, not just the parents, because most likely the parents are not going to be the only people in charge of, in this case, like feeding that baby. I always tell moms, like, if you plan on going back to, if somebody else is going to be bottle feeding this baby, they need to watch a video on paced bottle feeding. Like, if you're the only one who knows how to do it, but you're going to be at work.
That was another thing too, is just the ideas surrounding maybe other generations as well with the myths. I know, you know, I'd hear a lot, okay, if your baby is fussy, it's from what you're eating, right? So if you're having legumes or just like different types of fiber, oh, well, the baby's gassy because you had beans. And it's like, no, that's not how the metabolism works, you know? Or if the baby's fussy, that you need to remove, you know, XYZ allergens from your diet. And it's pretty rare that there's going to be that allergen so early. So, of course, like always look for symptoms and signs of, you know, an allergic reaction. But I think for the most part, it's just, like we said before, the baby's very sterile at the beginning, and it's getting used to all these different foods and proteins and, you know, things that are coming from the mom. So, yeah, don't always jump to conclusions.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the biggest myth is that Black women don't believe they can produce enough milk. That is like one of the biggest myths, things I hear all the time. Like, I don't think my baby's getting enough. I don't think my baby's getting enough. He's crying. And I'm like, tell me a little bit more about why you think that.
Yeah.
You know, is it the fact that you feel inadequate, you know, about the way you gave birth? Is it the fact that you don't really know what to be looking for when babies are hungry? We really have to, like, understand that this melanated milk is popping, baby.
Come
It's
on.
everything baby needs, right? And we have to, like, get that out of ourselves, like, that internalized fear. It can't live when you're trying to nourish your baby, because your baby internalizes it too and feels it.
Yeah.
And so you have to really speak positive affirmation over yourself. Like, I am, you know, flowing abundantly. My baby is healthy and thriving because of me. You know, my chocolate milk is everything.
Come on,
baby.
chocolate
It's
milk.
sweet. It's thick. It's, you know, growing this healthy, beautiful baby, you know, and that we are enough. As Black women, we are enough. You know, if we were enough to feed the white master's baby in slavery, and they had the option to give their own milk, but yet they giving, you know, Mama Bessie milk. What is it about this chocolate melanated milk? I'm telling you, and now we thinking ourselves that it's not good.
Right.
But I always tell people, like, if it was good enough to give them, they know something
Yes.
about this chocolate melanated milk. And so we got to understand that this milk is priceless, it's valuable, and our babies deserve to get every single last drop. Even if it's one drop, give it to your baby.
Even one drop.
Even one drop. Drip, drop.
That brings me to my next question. So, how do mothers' nutrition, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, but how does the mother's nutrition affect breastfeeding and milk supply? And what practical tips can we give to help mothers navigate the postpartum and recovery period and lactation?
The main thing I want everybody to know, and I'm going to look straight in this camera when I say this, you have to breastfeed to make milk. There's no cookie, there's no tea, there's no water, Under Armour. What's the armor? What's
It's
the
body
armor?
armor. I did it. It has coconut water.
You gotta breastfeed, right? The stimulation to the breast is what tells the body to keep going. What the body releases through the pump or the baby drinking is what the body replaces. So even if you're taking the teas and the cookies or whatever, it's not going to work if you're not frequently stimulating that breast. That's the biggest thing that a lot of folks need to understand, is that you have to stimulate your breast to keep milk flow going. And, there's certain times that the baby's hormones talk to your body's hormones and say, hey, mama, I'm going to be, 9 pounds. I need you to make milk for a 9-pound baby, not a 7-pound baby anymore. And our bodies are not like formula. We go, okay, add the extra scoop, add some 2 more ounces of water. Now we got 4. Our bodies actually have to respond, right? So our bodies listen to us. If we tell our bodies eat junk food, drink soda, don't exercise, then we gain weight, right? If we tell our bodies to move and eat healthy, then we lose weight, right? So if we're telling our bodies our babies need to eat, the body's going to feed the baby. It listens to what we tell it to do. So if you're, doing not breastfeeding enough, or you're giving lots of formula and not stimulating, you're literally telling your body, oh, my baby's drinking formula, so we don't need to make a lot of milk. And if we could just get that to match somehow, you got to breastfeed to make milk, and we're going to be all right.
100%. Yes. Supply and demand in the truest form. Yes. Supply and demand. Supply and demand.
This, and we try to make it like rocket science, like, one carry the,
Yeah, you're like, let me eat this.
Let me eat this. You're right.
I'm like, girl.
Right. But it's simple.
Yeah. And what's so cool too is just, I guess I just love breast milk, but you can see like the changes that occur from even the beginning of a feeding till the end, with the foremilk at the beginning, which is less fat, to the hind milk at the end, which is going to be more fat. And there's a balance there that the baby needs. And it's just so cool.
And our bodies, we made that. Like, I love like flipping over the bottle and just seeing it plug, like that plug of milk, because all of that thickness is right there, like it's thick, like me. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. The next question is, so during pregnancy, how do doulas and care providers prepare families for potential breastfeeding challenges, and how does emotional support shape successful breastfeeding journeys?
You can go. I can go. I can talk all day. I really feel, that you need to be held. Like I work at a hospital too, and I work in community, and I always tell the dad or the granny, whoever's that support person, I'm like, mama is your baby, and that's her baby. Oh. She needs to be held just like that baby needs to be held, because she's a new person. When you become a mother, you birth a brand new person. The old Brandy that was kicking it and doing this, and is not Brandy, tomorrow that I just gave birth. I'm a totally different person. And so while that mother is developing into this, whoever they're going to be, they need to be held. And that could be by the partner, the father, the mama, the community, the doula, they need to be held, because they're a baby too. So I will leave it at that and allow for my other colleagues to chime in.
I agree. with Brandy, like you have to bring everybody in. Like she's going to be caring for this baby, but that doesn't mean she doesn't need to be cared for herself. And then another important part is meeting people where they are. Like we are in the age of social media. We are in the age of her girlfriend sent her a video and she's looking at this person pump 10 ounces and you know, or she's searching online and now the algorithm is feeding her this.
Yes.
So we really have to, one, point them to professionals. If you know someone who has a social media, who is a professional, who is a part of the lactation team, dietitian team, doula team, point them in that direction. And also, if that's where they're getting their care, we can't just throw that to the wayside. Like, no, this doesn't work. Pull up this book or whatever it is. Like, they're not looking at books. They're looking at short form videos.
Yes.
So if that's how they're getting their information, then we really need to, as care teams, it is our responsibility to meet them where they're at. And I really think involving community care, like on social media, like if you're not on social media, you're probably not reaching the audience that needs you. Because I promise you they're on social media. And really helping them to understand like, okay, what is this person doing? You're literally, I've watched this, my algorithm thinks I'm absolutely a breastfeeding mom. You're watching these women with pictures of milk, a whole pitcher of milk. And then, you know, they're taking out one and they're pouring it in, taking it out, doing it a second time. And what that can do to someone's psyche, like you mentioned, like their mental health, and they're seeing them pump and they're getting, you know, 10 milliliters. And helping them to really understand, bring in those videos. Like when you're doing prenatal care, when you're doing breastfeeding care, when you're doing outpatient care, pull up that I promise you they've already seen it. Don't shy away from things like that because it's not relevant. If that's where they are, we really need to meet them in that point. Pull up the video, watch it with them, help them to understand your goal is not to make all the milk your body possibly can. That is not the goal. It is not needed. You can make 10 ounces 8 times a day. That's not the goal. And so helping them to understand like look how many followers this person has, look how much money they can be making, like look how much a baby actually needs, actually takes, actually drinks, and then helping them to like kind of like quell those fears. I really do think that's important. Meeting people where they are, using the tools that they are using, and not forcing brochures or handbooks or things that maybe we grew up using or our parents grew up using, because it's a different day and age now.
I would say too on that point is just all great points. Really understanding that that's just not the reality. Like perfection is not the reality of what breastfeeding is. And when there is that early education, like really making it known, there are going to be significant challenges. It may not go perfectly or exactly as you expect it to go, but this is what you can do and just ways to really help kind of troubleshoot even ahead, like get ahead of it. Whenever you can.
Yeah, and I just want to add that the first month of breastfeeding is the hardest, and I don't think we have a real life or realistic expectation of that. I think that people think, oh, it's going to be natural, you know, because of the Instagram and the TikToks and they're just beautiful or like, you know, all these things. And then when you get the engorgement or the sore nipple or the crying baby, you're like, wait, what is this? You know, and I think that realistic expectation of like anything that you don't know how to do and that you're doing is going to be hard. You know, that first month, if you start working out, it's going to be hard. If you get a new job, there's a learning curve, right? It's going to be challenging, but anything that's challenging is worth doing. And so if you hang in there past that first month, man, you're going to be able to be on Instagram with your photo. Like, I can't look at my baby, right? But you got to get through that first month. That's the hardest.
And that is very hard for anyone to navigate. The first month of anything, even drinking water 75 days in a row. That's really hard. So, oh my gosh, I love this conversation, and I want to make sure that we get a question from the audience. Now, if there's anyone from our audience, our live audience here, if there's anyone that has a question that we can answer, please step up to the mic. We can take two. We'll take yours first. Go ahead.
Okay. So when I was
we can
breastfeeding,
take three.
one thing I didn't know was the vitamin D in the milk supply. Can you touch on that and how that works?
You want to go?
What about the vitamin D?
Great. So they told me that my breast milk didn't supply vitamin D, and I had to get droplets. But I didn't tell me that until they believed my son's skin was turning yellow, and they said, "Oh, he might have. I think it's jaundice." Thank you.
Jaundice.
And I was like, "Well, that's great." Could have told me that, when I started breastfeeding. So after the fact, I went into the, like Target, and I got the droplets, and you could put it either in the bottle that has the breast milk or right on the breast.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. And when I talk to more moms, or sometimes when I run into moms, I just make sure to tell them, hey, just so you know, breast milk doesn't come with vitamin D. And at least and it could be a myth.
Yes.
But that's what I was led to believe. And so if you could touch on it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's one of those things is for most, you are recommended to have the vitamin D drops for sure. Like that's just part of what you need for the baby. When it comes to the jaundice too, that's really common. And usually that's going to peak with like 2 to 5 days for the regular. But that's common in like 60+% of babies. But yeah, there are some nutrients that you will have to supplement. And iron is another one that's really key and important. Luckily, it is within the milk, but yeah, it's sometimes you just have to supplement things.
Can I add to a little bit? So just Americans in general are vitamin D deficient because we don't get access to a lot of sun, right? And so because we are deficient as a nation, that's why the vitamin D doesn't transfer very well to the breast milk. And so you can give the vitamin D drops if it's summer, sunny. You can always, I always say activate the melanin and put your baby in the sun for at least 30 minutes. But yeah, it's not anything necessarily wrong with us or you. It's just as a nation, we're vitamin D deficient. That's why they added to the orange juice, you see vitamin D added, calcium added, or in the milk, because we need to get extra because we don't have enough. And then as far as the jaundice too, there's the bilirubin or extra red blood cells that are left over from the birth that if baby is not pooping and peeing frequently enough, they don't come out of the body. And so it can cause the liver is not processing it enough, and it can cause the skin to turn yellow. But the way you combat that or get rid of it is by feeding the baby frequently so they can poop and pee, and all those extra red blood cells can excrete out through the liver. So,
And the colostrum is really good for clearing that.
yeah.
How old was your baby? Just curious.
Right now?
No, when this happened, when you were told that you needed to supplement with vitamin D.
I don't remember. So it's probably early. It was early on.
Like less than a month? Less than a few weeks? Oh, okay.
Honestly, don't remember.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah.
Just curious. Because like Brandy was saying, a lot of the times it's just like that bilirubin buildup and the body can't clear it fast enough. And so you do need more volume. So you do need more breast milk. But like she was saying, our lifestyles, we work in offices, we're not outside, we're at home, we're indoors, and we just don't get the sunlight that we need to make the vitamin D.
Hope that answered your question.
Helpful. So just to clarify, our milk does have vitamin D if I'm in the sun? Just to clarify, our milk will have vitamin D if I'm exposed to the sun and let's say I'm taking vitamin D supplements or some type of, it would come out through my milk?
Yep.
Okay.
So take your vitamin D, get your sunlight, put your baby in the sunlight. Because the thing is, if you don't have enough vitamin D, then you can have rickets or bone loss. And then you know how you see people with really severe bow legs and things of that nature? That's what happens if you don't have enough vitamin D.
And there was another question out there.
Hello, I'm Rachel.
Hey, Rachel.
Hello, hello. So when my baby was born, he wasn't latching very well. So for like the first 2 weeks, I was like pumping really aggressively
Come
into the
closer
mic, pumping really aggressively, and then finally Roots blessed me with a lactation consultant, and he was on it. So he's 18 months now.
Yay,
So do you?
congrats.
I know you said 6 months is a good length of time to breastfeed, but when do you recommend moms kind of, cut the cord?
Well, I don't think I'm the best person to answer that question.
Understandable.
Because as my fellow panelists know, I was telling them in the back that I breastfed my baby for 4.5 years, my youngest son. And so I'm not the best person to answer that question. I say before they go to kindergarten, cut the cord.
Cut the cord.
One thing too is like even one bottle of breast milk, like for as long as you can, is going to have protective effects.
Okay.
And when we say 6 months, when you hear that, those are the guidelines for exclusively breastfeeding. So the guidelines are exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. But then after that, once you introduce solids and once they're eating table foods and things like that, you can continue to give breast milk like for 4.5 years. The AAP recommends at least 2 years. So that's the AAP says 2 years.
2 years.
But you can continue. And I always tell my parents, like anywhere you're using water, once your baby starts eating solids, you can use breast milk. So if you're thinning out food, if you're making cereals, if you're doing all of those things where you would add water, you can add breast milk there.
Okay. I mean, he's eating chicken bones, so I think.
Yeah.
And
Are you saying you ready? Oh, okay.
So I was just gonna add that anytime that either mama or baby is ready to kind of end the journey, you can always think about weaning, and weaning looks differently for every parent. Yeah. One thing that you just gotta know is that if you wean, you're giving up your superpower, girl. So you can't be like, come here, go to sleep, get your milk. You like actually gotta put them to sleep. Think about that. Think about the pros and cons. But as long as you're breastfeeding, every time you breastfeed, you're giving your baby different immune protection in all the different environments. And when they're into toddlerhood, they're touching everything, grabbing, eating dirt and stuff. So girl, keep giving them that breast milk as long as possible.
Okay.
Unless you're ready.
Yes.
When
then we will support you with the weaning plan.
We can wean, yes. Yes, and then we'll support whatever decision. I stopped at 18 months, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but then I also wanted a little bit of my freedom back too. Yeah. And so I understand completely. And just like either 4 years or at 6 months or 18 months or 2 weeks, however much you give your baby is going to be beneficial to your baby. And so you doing it.
I did that thing then.
Yes.
You did.
Girl, all the things.
All the things. Now, do we have one more question out there? Okay. So the last question I really just wanted to ask is, so what does breastfeeding equity look like? And what steps should we take as a community to build sustainable support for Black mothers?
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question.
Because I don't think we need support in all spaces. Yes. So I'll start there. Like we need wherever you feel like, and when I say you, I mean the community feels like you can support a woman in her or a person in their breastfeeding journey. You can be that support by encouraging, by not judging. Sometimes that looks like staying quiet and letting them, take their own breastfeeding journey with the help of their professionals. I think we need access. Like I've said, we need access. We need options and choices, really holding providers accountable. Yes. Bringing them into the conversation, because I think a lot of times we do a lot of outward projection, which we do need to do. Like, what can you do? This is how you advocate for yourself. This is what you should be asking for. This is what you should be looking for. But also hold those OBs and those pediatricians accountable when you see that a woman, or that she wasn't offered, they didn't give a breast pump, and they usually give a breast pump. Ask the question, why didn't this parent get a breast pump? Why wasn't this ordered? When you see someone say that they need to be supplemented, if you're working in a space there and you know that maybe they didn't need to be supplemented, or maybe they could have waited, or maybe it could have been done a different way. Ask those questions. If you find yourself in a space where you have access to authority in the maternal health care world, oftentimes we need to be that voice of holding them to account, really. And so that they can think about it, because yes, they can be pediatricians or neonatologists or OBs, but they're people with their own biases. And so, yeah.
It's a beautiful answer. And I think we can drop the mic there, or we...
Oh, you know I got a lot to say, but I will keep it very minimal. Two things. The first thing is we need to get more Black folks into lactation.
Yes.
It is a very great field to be in. You get to work in a variety of different settings with community, community health centers, private practice, hospitals. You can be an educator, right? There's so many ways to support lactation. And people are having babies, so we can't ask for equitable, care. We can't say we need culturally responsive care, but then there's no Black folks that's getting into the field, right? And so if you breastfed, you fell in love with it, like really, I urge everyone to look into becoming a peer or a certified lactation educator or a lactation consultant. So that's number one, to get more Black folks into lactation support. The other thing is to provide jobs for this new workforce, that all these Black mamas that could get into lactation. It only takes about 2 to 3 years, to become a lactation consultant. But then there's no jobs, right? And so how can we prioritize getting Black women who are now lactation professionals jobs in these health settings? How can we build Medi-Cal and insurances so that it is sustainable for people to come into this field and not have to charge, an arm and a leg to do a home visit for someone? We can build the insurance, right? And so thinking about policies that need to be in place to support all of these new lactation consultants that are going to be coming into this workforce, how can we provide them with jobs so that folks can have access to equitable care, to people who look like them, who understand what it is to be a Black woman, and breastfeeding, providing human breast milk to their baby. What does that look like, right? And so we can't say, like, we need to increase breastfeeding rates, we need to do this, but then we're not providing the support to get folks to that part, so that place, so that we can increase the breastfeeding rates. So one, get more Black folks into lactation, and then two, give them some jobs, because we need the bag, baby. All that. We need our bag. We need a coin.
We do. And I know what you're doing.
Yes.
We need it. And also, you're so right. We really need to provide the jobs. We need to provide the jobs. And if we keep saying we really want culturally congruent care, we got to make sure that we're out there. So it sounds like everybody out there is going to be a lactation consultant or a peer support person, peer support in lactation, because it's needed. You are needed. And was there any, what was it?
I just want to add a statistic. I saw on Instagram today that only 2%, there's only, out of the lactation consultants, I think it was in California, I can't remember where the demographic, but out of all the lactation consultants, only 2% are Black. Only 2%. So, and I know we the people's having the babies, so we need more.
Yes. We need more. We need you.
Yes.
we need more of us in the space. And so I just want to take a moment to thank these lovely women, these panelists. Please, audience, if you can help me celebrate them. Amazing work. And also thank you, audience, for being here. Woo, okay. And this has been an incredible conversation of just we're honest, we've been transparent, we're bringing our expertise in and our lived experience, and I just really want to thank each of you ladies for being here, because you guys are amazing in the work that you're doing, and the boots on the ground, really, you're doing the work, you're really making a difference in these women's lives, and they wouldn't be where they're at without the help of the support. Like we've talked about it tonight, it's about the support of our community that makes a difference in the success of one mother, right? And so, so today it's really been clear that, breastfeeding is not about just nutrition. It's about equity. It's about justice. It's about community care. And the barriers are real. And even though the barriers are real, the solutions are also real. Yes. And so we can lean on doulas, peer support. We can also hold hospitals accountable. We can change policies. There's so many things that we can do as a community to try to shift that narrative, to shift what's going on now. Because 20 years down the line, I don't want my daughter saying that I couldn't get any support or saying the same things that we're saying here today. There has to be a change. Right. And if we're the ones that have to make the change, then we got to start. Black Breastfeeding Week is about reclaiming our stories, shifting the narrative, and each of us play a role in that. And so just want to say that we make a difference in the support that our women get. And today, please know that you can activate your role right now by wanting to be any type of support to a woman. And our Black women, we really do breastfeed. So we've always have, we always will. And so we just continue to support that effort. And so let's continue this conversation, continue the celebration of Black Breastfeeding Week as this, August 25th all the way down to the 31st, celebrating Black women and our voices and our stories and telling the truth. All right. Thank you. Let it flow, sis. Let's flow, sis. And thank you all for coming. Have a great night.